At long last. Alright, let's see if this story has a happy ending. So we're back on the timing chain cover, and you know, with everything there's kind of a risk-reward type of scenario that happens, right? The problem with the 2.5 was that it had a timing belt, and in the manual, right in there, the timing belt is rated for 60,000 miles. So every 60,000 miles you're going in there and changing the timing belt, and I've heard numbers, you know, anywhere from, you know, $1,000+ basically to change out that timing belt. You know, so there's a big investment there every 60,000 miles. So you have to kind of go over that risk-reward thing. So when I was looking at this car, you know, I was like, man, it sure would be nice to get away from that timing belt and having to, you know, pull that apart and change it every 60,000 miles to avoid catastrophe, which happened to that car. But the alternative here is the timing chain, and you've got, you know, 2 timing chains, sealed case. But the big problem here is this ridge around here, and the fact that you have to clean out all of this gasket and redo the silicone gasket type of seal in here, you know, along with all of the O-rings that flow between the ports, between the block and then this. You've got oil flowing between here through, you know, whatever this thing is. I don't know if this is the oil pump or even what it is really. You've got some other, you know, ports here. This is internal port going up to your oil filter, and then you've got these really dirty cam sensors, you know, inside either side here and here, and then over here and here, and they're just disgusting coated with you know, the caramelized oil gunk that's in here. I mean, it's just everywhere. And this is after spraying it out. I actually would spray this out after work with a degreaser. Spray it out and then, you know, spray it out with water to kind of clean it. And then I've sprayed it with, you know, brake parts cleaner also, and I'm still not even there. So I've got to clean out all of this sludge from all of these different areas, and then go through and clean out this whole ledge all the way around the sealing surface, just to be able to get this thing to seal back up, you know, and put it on there. Then of course replace all the O-rings, and then there's a ledge around all of these little, I guess they're kind of standoffs built in to this timing cover, and all these little standoffs have a ridge around it with sealant on there also. So the risk for running the timing belt is the belt fills at 60,000. You have to change it out, but it's just a plastic cover on there. You know, you pop the belt, new belt on, or old belt on, new belt on, versus here, you know, the head gaskets fail after 100,000 miles, and then you have to go through this whole process. So you've got 40,000 miles there, and the difference in cost from, you know, having to change the head gaskets out on the 2.0, you go from let's see here, 1,500-ish, I guess, for the timing belt, to now you're up over 3,000 for the head gasket job. And some shops, I'm sure, probably don't even do it. It's probably more than that. I would say book value on new head gaskets for the Subaru, just so far what I've got into it, I'm assuming a shop could charge you for 40 hours at $100 an hour, maybe just slightly fewer hours. But you know, all these crush gaskets, all these O-rings, you've got to test drive it, heat it up, cool it down, heat it up, cool it, you know, several cycles. And the shop is doing that to make sure that the repair isn't going to fail. And then the success rate of the repair, I'm assuming, because, you know, if your car came in like the state that I'm doing this car, the failure rate is probably fairly high. So you have to build a little bit of that into it. If the mechanic has to get in there a second time, you know, of course their job is to get it right the first time, and they make extra money if they get it done quicker than the book value. But in this case, I don't think they're, you know, going to be making off very well. So no mechanic whose time is what makes him his money is going to want to do this job anyway. You know, so I think the average shop is just going to go, well, you need a new engine. Because by the time they change out the new engine in and out, you know, you're maybe double the price, maybe even more than that. But, you know, at least you know you've got zero chance for failure in that swap out process, or near zero, versus, you know, maybe 50% is the success rate in doing the head gaskets. So, okay, sludge, round 8. Look at this. I mean, what are you guys doing? Why is that in my engine? Now, hopefully this video isn't discouraging you from trying to take this on, but every review or every sort of publication I could find on the internet for this job was basically, don't try this at home, right? The age of being able to fix your stuff is long gone, according to the internet, and at least for this engine, right? And I think they use the same engine in the Scion and the, what was it, Toyota FB or something. They used the 2.0 naturally aspirated timing chain version like this one here. So when your head gasket fails at 100,000 miles, or probably sooner, because, you know, you've got a manual transmission and you're putting turbos on it and having fun with it on track days and stuff like that, you're going to have to do this repair a lot sooner. If you do attempt this repair, maybe down in the comments, what was your success rate in doing your head gaskets at the house? And for, you know, even for that matter, if this video or the internet discouraged you from doing this yourself and you had it done at a shop, what was the shop success rate of fixing your Subaru 2.0 head gaskets? What was the time frame, maybe? How much did it cost? Because it's all kind of speculation from what I can see. I guess I could have called up the dealership and found that out, but I'm sure there's a lot more people like me that are having this issue and have had to go through this, because these engines came out more than almost 10 years ago now. Yeah, somewhere around 10 years ago. So everybody's getting up over 100,000 miles for all these cars. So I'm assuming this failure rate is pretty prolific, you know, throughout the engines. And a lot of people have either tried to do this, but it's not on YouTube, or have had it done in a shop, and the information just isn't out there. So if you would, down in the comments, 2.0 head gasket repairs, replacement. What's your experience with it? How much did it cost? What was the success rate of the repair? Alright, so here is the end result. I'm not going to touch it because it is prepped as much as it can be for the sealant that goes around there. This is all of the sludge to speak of that I could, you know, get out of there. And this is not, you know, 100% of the sludge that was in there. But, you know, some of the main kind of buildup areas, which is going to be around the cam sensors on either side, in these little hollows here, and in some of the gallows. But yeah, that's as good as it gets. That was, so far, between this and the engine, 2 full cans of brake clean, and that brings the tally of brake clean for this job up to 5 cans. You know, basically 1.5 for each head, and then now 2 more for this and then the car. So, let's look at the car real quick, the engine and the block, and then also talk about the paint marks that I made on the engine. Yeah, here again, you're going to get to a point of, kind of diminishing returns. There was also a lot of sludge in here, like below this gallow here, inside some of these plugs, where, sludge is just built up. But one of the best things that I could have done here was my paint marks, and you can see here, paint mark, paint mark, paint mark, and then paint mark on the chain, and then in line with the each cam. So the cams are lined up. These ones here, I had to grab. Actually, it was an oil filter wrench to turn it and get it lined up, and then have the slack on the side with the tensioner. It was pretty difficult getting these lined back up, but a big help was, again, the paint mark on the chain and then on the cam to make sure those are perfectly aligned. Of course, got our tensioners back on there. Same with this side, we're lined up arrow to arrow, paint mark to paint mark, and having the red on this side made it even easier. But that's one thing, if you're going to use the paint mark method like I did, make sure they don't rub off. But these did a pretty good job of staying on there. So, should be perfectly back in time. We're all cleaned off here. I got to get a couple O-rings that were stuck in there out with a knife. There's an O-ring up here, O-ring here, O-ring here, and then an O-ring here. And I think that's all I'm seeing, where it mates up to some of these flats here. Again, those are all cleaned off. I took brake clean and then wiped it off, and then alcohol on the wipe all the way around again. Did that on this and on the cover. So, we'll see. Come around this back side here. And just hold the engine from swaying. You're going to have to hold it somewhere besides right there. That's where this is going.
Oh. I mean, I'd rather get my hand smashed. Oh, Jesus, here he comes. It's like I knew you needed me. I feel you.
One of the harder things throughout this process is trying to remember, the order of operations in which you took things apart, so then you can put things back together the same way. Hopefully this video acts as a good reference for you. If it does, go ahead and feel free to hit the subscribe button down there. If not, thumbs down is there also. There's also something called the super thanks. So if you are super thankful that this video is out there to help you rebuilding your 2.0 engine, you can leave me a tip. Probably a little dollar sign or something. They kind of hide it where you can actually give me some money for showing you all this stuff on engines and farm life and homesteading, whatnot. Okay, I do remember I took these off while it was up and out of here, since it's so hard down below. So I'm going to put those back in. And then you also have to remember where all your hoses lined up. There's a couple on the other side. There was one that I was waiting until I had the engine coming out to get, that's on the bottom there, and there's like a little vacuum block thing over there. We'll look at that, see if we can figure out where all that stuff goes. Alright, here's our vacuum block deal. I guess that's supplying vacuum to the trans. But there's one tube right here at the bottom of the engine, and I think there's another one up here, and that's where these go. And then this mounts somewhere. Okay, yeah, I got this one hose hooked up down on the bottom of the engine there. I think this hose might come up. I mean, it definitely goes up to something. I just don't know what yet. Pretty tough to tell. Like I said, I think it's an exhaust port here, even though it's in with this crossover tube for the antifreeze. I think that one was an antifreeze. But I don't know. We'll just keep lowering it down and see what happens, I guess. So we've got our new head gaskets in there, engine all reassembled. You just want to make sure your torque converter is, look, I had something growing in there. Want to make sure your torque converter is fully seated against there like that. And you can check the distance here. You know, it's about half of a finger's width, and if you move it up and down a little bit, it should kind of rub. You can kind of hear it rubbing just a little bit there. So I'm going to blow this all out, and then we'll get this engine back in there. We've almost got our engine kind of where we want it there. Got both the studs in. At this point, I like to grease the studs, grease pretty much everything that's going to be mating up together here. Right, wrong, or indifferent. A little grease never hurts. Okay, let's see if we can stab this back together. Sometimes it's not going to want to cooperate. Just get it here. Persuasion. So I've got the engine back looking like an engine. I've just got this loose in place there. Got some new gaskets on it. Got some of the hoses routed. Fuel crossover tube. One thing I did before I put this back together, I put this in boiling water. And when you put it in boiling water, it's going to open up. And this one did. So this is doing what it's supposed to be doing. But just for future... I guess this is the holes you drill in there if you're just kind of concerned that maybe there's some exhaust gases in there. And now that I've got a little gun shy from that, drilled some holes. And we'll put this back in there. We'll get all this back together. I'm going to have to now drain and refill my trans. I think it's about 6 quarts, but there's a whole procedure. It's a non-serviceable item. Quote-unquote from the factory. You just never have to change the fluid in it, I guess. But we've got all this stuff going back on here. Looks pretty good so far. I'm going to continue on here. Okay, I think I got all the hoses rerouted here. I've got this locked down. I've got to hook my electrical back up here. But this hose actually broke in the process, and I think I used 3/8 fuel line to replace it. This is from the top of the crankcase here into the intake, and then there's another one that comes up and comes into the front of the throttle body here. Fuel line crossovers underneath of this, so you kind of need to put this on and then the fuel. And there's a fuel, it looks like a vent line or something. That looks like it hooks up right here on top of the intake, and then vacuum line on this side from down and that metal tube coming up into the throttle body. I've got one that I don't know where it goes yet. Hopefully the rest of the puzzle will come together, and I'll figure that one out. Got the starter on there. There we go. That's all tightened up. Got all of the electrical connectors where they go. There's one for this here, one for this here. I didn't change out the thermostat because it doesn't look bad. Or I'm sorry, the temperature sensor here. I took it out and there wasn't any like stuff clogged up on and around it, but who knows. Yeah, all the electrical connectors connected. I think I've still got a couple of these vacuum lines, yeah, with tabs not brought up to where they're supposed to be yet. Right there's another one. But I think I got all of the stuff plugged that's supposed to be plugged, and all of the tubes going to where they're supposed to be going. They leave you little clamp spots on the intake here to give you kind of a better idea of where they're supposed to hook up. So that is how my stuff is looking. That's in there, that's hooked up. You can get this. Oh, where's that going? Let's get this coming back over. Yeah, I've only got a handful of bolts left. Maybe these two go in the back. No, looks a little short for that one. Yeah, now the trick is just finding out, which bolts go where. Well, I remember this is one of the last things that came off, and these 4 bolts here were what was holding it on there. Yeah, because something bolts right on top of it here. So that is good to know. Order of operations. Again, I didn't. There's no Chilton's, or Hayes manual for this. Can't remember if I said that or not. At least I couldn't find one. If you want to link one down there, if you find one, that would be great for future reference. But so I went into this one blind, not knowing. I think about the only real mistake I made, was the torque converter, not getting that off. And I've put, automatic transmission engines in. I guess I just didn't realize, the cart before the horse, I guess, with the torque converter connected to the engine. Definitely goes in there nice and easy when you're just putting the torque converter in by itself. But it was a couple steps. It kind of like slid in there a little bit, and then you rotate it, and then it slides in a little bit more. And you rotate it, and then it slides in a little bit more. Yeah, it's nice to get these snugged up as much as you can with your hands here. And I'll go back and hit all of those with the gun. See, and then on stuff like this, like I've left the fasteners in there, so I can get an idea here of how this is going to sit. I still haven't figured out what this is. You know what? There was a bolt hole in the bottom of the block. What is this supposed to be doing? I don't know. I think that's what it is. What does it do? Why are you here? I think this is where, yeah, this is where this goes. But I don't see any relevancy in it being there. Okay. So for this belt, I am a long way off, like a long way. It's got to go around this, and I mean it's not even close. This is the way it goes. I think, unless it goes, I guess it could go like this. Does this make more sense? Maybe. Yeah, I guess that could make more sense. Let's try that. Yeah, that's it. That is much more agreeable there. Okay, that's lined up. That's lined up. All that's lined up. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to rotate it any. Brute force. There we go. So it makes a down, up, and around. I should have guessed they wouldn't have come across here and rather done that. All right, all these are tight except for these. At long last. All right, let's see if this story has a happy ending. I've gone through, double-checked, triple-checked everything, made sure to add oil to the engine, of course antifreeze, and then I had to go and get one of these pumps to pump transmission fluid into the trans. Of course it doesn't fit the standard quart-size bottle. You have to dump it and find something with the right size thing for the Harbor Freight pump. But I'm going to get the ground hooked up here, see what's happening with that. Okay, nothing so far. See if it runs. Fingers crossed. Take a look here. That's actually a good sign. I think that was transmission. I'm gonna pump some more fluid into the trans and see if that sound doesn't go away. All right. Well, that was a good first start, I guess. Let's try it one more time. I've got the transmission topped off there. Since the whole torque converter was empty, I think I needed all 6 quarts in there. So we'll see if that does it. I drained it, flushed it, and then had to pump it all back in there, which is just a whole bunch of fun. Wouldn't recommend the Harbor Freight even to an enemy. It's just not a good tool. So let's try it one more time. I'll get you zoomed in here. Maybe we can see if we're doing a little bit better. Still a little smoke. I'm going to let it run here until it gets up to temperature, which, it'd be nice to have a temperature gauge. But no smoke out the exhaust. That cleared up. And not even a check engine light. We're all good there. Well, that wasn't the most fun I've ever had. Let's wrap up by doing a quick lessons learned. We'll do cost comparison at home versus at the shop. I actually got a quote from Subaru on doing this job, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But yeah, big lesson learned. If you're going to be working on these, after they're 15 years old, man, all those electrical connectors, I actually broke one off trying to get the engine back in there. It was actually the variable valve timing solenoid or something off the front of the engine that's electronically controlled. Broke the electrical connector off of there, so that was about 90 bucks. Getting a new one of those. Car's been down for about 3 weeks. Working on it on the weekends and then over the holiday break here pretty much every day. And I had to wait on some parts to come to get it back up to 100%. But the cost of the gasket kit on eBay was about 200 bucks. Of course, I didn't know about the torque converter having to stay in the car, and knowing that process. Luckily enough, there was a gal on YouTube who showed the full engine disassembly. That was really helpful. And let's see here. So 200 bucks there, 100 bucks in trans fluid, 6 quarts. Just went ahead and drained it and refilled it. Seems to be doing fine now. I'm going to check it car level at 160 degrees or up to temperature, and it should be right at the fill level there. So I'll have to check on that. And then, like I said, 90 bucks for that sensor. So total cost under, 400 bucks-ish, somewhere's around there. Of course, all the tools, having your car down for that amount of time versus at the shop. I got a quote from the dealership to do a head gasket replacement. It is 40. They quoted me 4,200, and then an additional 600 in parts plus tax. So right around $5,000 for this repair. So if you're going to be doing it at your house or in your garage or on your own, you're saving yourself, somewhere's around 4,600 bucks, right about there. But it's extremely difficult. The skill level and factor, and I've worked on one of the hardest projects that I'd put as a 5 out of 5 would be EGR and oil cooler replacement on a Ford 6.0 without the cab off. And I did that, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Until this ranks right up there. I don't know which one would be more difficult. It's tough to say. The amount of crush gaskets and single-use gaskets and stuff on the 6.0, I wasn't able at that time to find a gasket kit like this one that I got off of eBay. It included all those crush gaskets, O-rings, everything that you needed to replace. But man, the amount of time cleaning out the sludge on this one, cleaning off all that gasket material, making sure that the O-rings are in place when things go back together internally, so oil's flowing between that timing cover and the engine. Man, it's such a nightmare. I don't know. If it's not worth $5,000 to have it done at the dealership, then this is might be an option for you. So. Anyways, I'm going to go for a little test drive here. Why don't you get out there and have me some man time too?